So we're moving on now, and feeling just pleasure and enjoyment of life is a big part of wanting to stay around. And so this sex health panel is really relevant for all of us, and we are fortunate enough to have Greta Blackburn to lead that. I want to tell you a little bit about her. She's an actress, producer. She's the co-author of The Immortality Edge, and she's now focusing on her core passion of making 100 the new 50. Hey, Greta, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing fine, Joe.
Great. Good to have you. Good to have you with us at RadFest.
Thank you. Thank you. I figured I'd open by saying sex, good sex, bad sex, so-so sex, no sex. And then once I got everybody's attention, we could move into the serious business of human sexuality within the context of longevity. And we certainly are living in a really unique time here to talk about sexuality as well as outside of longevity. We've assembled a team of experts, and they're going to each talk. And then at the end, we're going to have a Q&A. Our first presenter is a gentleman named Dave Asprey. He's a 3-time New York Times bestselling science author, host of the Webby Award-winning podcast Bulletproof Radio, and has been featured on The Today Show, CNN, The New York Times, Dr. Oz, and more. Now, over the last 2 decades, Dave, the father of biohacking, has worked with world-renowned doctors, researchers, scientists, and global mavericks to uncover the latest, most innovative methods, techniques, and products for enhancing mental and physical performance. Dave has personally spent nearly $2 million taking control of his own biology, pushing the bounds of human possibility, all in the name of science and evolution. He's the creator of the Bulletproof Diet and innovator of Bulletproof Coffee, collagen protein supplements, and many more advances in commercial wellness products. But Dave's mission is to empower the entire globe with information and knowledge that unlocks the superhuman and everyone at any age. Dave Asprey.
Hey, I'm Dave Asprey from Bulletproof. DaveAsprey.com is my website where I write a lot of this stuff. And I'm excited to be on a panel with 2 other practitioners, or I say 2 practitioners, me being an unlicensed biohacker and not a medical professional, just a good science researcher and writer, where we're going to talk about sex and sexual health and longevity. And I'm going to go in a direction that I know our other 2 speakers probably won't. If you look at ancient Taoism, which is probably the opposite of what you would expect to find at RadFest, this was the practice of immortality. The ancient alchemists across every culture that I've been able to find from my most recent book on anti-aging called Superhuman, they were all pursuing this, and they went all down different paths, but many of them arrived at this Taoist equation that I set out to disprove, and I want to share this with you. And this ancient knowledge says, if you are a man, and this only applies to men, and you want to live forever, you should definitely not ejaculate more than once a month. And if you want to maintain your health, there's an equation. And the equation I'm going to share with you, and then I'll tell you why I'm talking about this, but just write this down. It's age in years minus 7 divided by 4. And that yields a number. And that's the number of days that you want to have between ejaculations. Not orgasms, but ejaculations if you're a man. Now, being a rational, Western-minded computer science, computer hacker, Silicon Valley guy, I looked at that and said, that's utter BS, so I'm going to disprove it. So I spent a year, and I've published all the data on my website, going through and doing the 30-day experiment, doing the more frequent, less frequent, and tracking a daily happiness metric. No, it's not as scientific as heart rate variability and a bunch of other stuff, but it turns out there's a body of evidence that I've referenced all over the website that says that as a man, you actually do lose something when you ejaculate too frequently. John Gray, who wrote the Mars and Venus series, but is a very knowledgeable biohacker, has also gone through and talked about an amazing drop in testosterone that I've also experienced after ejaculation. So if your goal is to have the hormones of a young man and you are ejaculating like a young man, but you're a middle-aged or an older man, you will deplete your testosterone levels unless you are biologically replacing them. And even then, there's probably some other prostaglandins and some other things that matter. So I'm going to just put it out there that says very frequent ejaculation is likely something that is going to make you live not as long as you might think. And certainly it'll make you less happy than you might expect. For many men, if not all men, there is an ejaculation hangover. So what I ended up learning during this experiment, what I'm sharing with you, this is not the only part of my talk here, we're going to get more technical in a minute, is that if you decide to try a practice like that, the side effect is that you end up having more sex when you have less ejaculations. Well, because you're going to be horny all the time. And what that means is your oxytocin levels go up, your partner's oxytocin levels go up. And that alone is an anti-aging variable as well. And if you measure oxytocin in most of us, especially during pandemic and social isolation and all the other stuff that they have us doing, you're going to find your oxytocin levels are low. And that's one of the anti-aging hormones that you may be aware of that you can manipulate with a nasal sprayers or creams and things like that, troches. So yeah, I just have to put it out there. That is worth paying attention to as a guy. Fortunately for women, the rules are very different according to Taoist philosophy and according to all of the anecdotal data from the study. And there apparently, well, there is no ejaculation, at least most of the time. So you don't have to worry about that. And women actually probably don't live as long unless they're having regular orgasms, ideally with a partner. Again, this is low-level species survival kind of stuff, reduction of stress, increase in bonding hormones for both men and women that actually matters. And it's not a part of our radical anti-aging agenda, but the people who studied longevity for a very long time, TCM throughout India, yogic practices, even some of the ancient European and even Muslim practices would touch on this area, but it's always been taboo. So since this is RadFest and we're going to the very edges of what we're going to talk about, I wanted you to have that as part of the conversation. Now, what else can you do? Certainly testosterone therapy for men and women is something you're going to hear about from the other panelists in this section. So I'm not going to go too deep on that, other than just to tell you that the number of women whose really quality of life has come back from testosterone is much larger than you might think. And depending on who you are and how much you know about this, the effect of topical testosterone on women, very low levels directly on the vagina, the so-called scream cream, is not to be underestimated. And especially if women are having issues around perimenopause and things like that, that can be really restorative and frankly fun. So I believe you'll probably hear about that. My guess would be from Amy, Dr. Amy Killen, but I'm not sure. I just want to say that testosterone is not just about sexual wellness. It's actually about cognitive wellness, and almost everything you do sexually is reflected in the brain. And another thing that is remarkable in its effectiveness is PT141, the peptide. When you take PT141 as a man, and likely as a woman, although it has different effects in women than in men, it really changes your responsiveness to that of a younger person. And it's something that has anti-aging properties. And I believe that should be, especially for men over probably about 40, a regular part of how they maintain their potency for decades and decades and decades, to the point that you're in your 80s and you're performing the way you want to perform without requiring the drugs that can help with that. There's also the PDE4 stimulators, and certainly some of those are drugs. There's also herbs that are particularly useful for that. Obviously, there's a bunch of herbs as well as medical substances that can block aromatase and all of that. Not entirely sure that that's good for you to block aromatase, especially fully and when it's not reversible. There's an herb called cnidium, CNIDIUM, that has pretty strong Viagra-like effects. I have written about that on the Dave Asprey website with a bunch of studies. It turns out it's also a broad spectrum anti-inflammatory herb, and something that probably has a place for people who are looking for sexual wellness because it has other beneficial effects. It comes out of traditional Chinese medicine, and it's very, very noticeable what that stuff does, especially in combination with PT141. I'll just say I wouldn't want to be in the pharmaceutical business and marketing ED stuff when I was up against people who are properly treated with testosterone, peptides, and possibly some herbs like that, because those make a big difference. And on top of that, there are other things you can do that I know you're going to hear about here around shockwave therapy and things like that are very, very noticeable. In terms of rejuvenation for men and women, I'm not going to go super deep on that because although I have been an early experimenter, Dr. Killen was actually spoke at my conference, the Bulletproof Biohacking Conference, about when she injected stem cells into my penis. And so we definitely know each other. You could say that. But there are noticeable effects from doing that, especially in combination with shockwave therapy. As well as there are a bunch of techniques that use vacuum pumps and things like that. I have never found those to be necessary, although medically some people, there are studies that show really good results. I find that patient compliance with that, I've never talked to a guy who really did that protocol for the 30 days they recommend, because it takes a lot of time and it's just uncomfortable. The only guys who do that are ones who have very strong ED problems or usually have issues around concern about size and things like that, and they're kind of desperate. So that tends to be something that could work, but probably in practice isn't that commonly used. There are also other things that are not talked about as much. Certainly, we talk about beats and nitric oxide levels, and how if you increase nitric oxide, you can increase vasodilation. And this works really well for people who have normal genetics, but a lot of people have NOS 1, 2, or 3 genetic issues where that doesn't work very well. There's 3 kinds of nitric oxide synthase. There's endothelial, which is the kind you're targeting. Then there's neural NOS, which you also want. And then there's inducible NOS, which is actually a pro-inflammatory thing that you probably don't want. So depending on your gut bacteria and your genetics, the things like beetroot that are supposed to be good for you may not be good for you. It may, in fact, be pro-inflammatory. They can cause headaches that aren't caused by blood flow. They're caused basically by the differentiation of where the nitrogen goes. So for people like that, or just for people in general, one of the things that is profoundly effective is red light therapy and infrared light therapy. So one of the companies that I started that does circadian biology, stuff like that, makes a lamp, and there are a variety of high quality infrared and red LED combination things with or without pulsing. If you put that on either the vagina or the penis and the testes, pulsing lights work better, which is why I do 10 hertz pulsing on the stuff that I make, but you can get constant ones. Put them on there for 10 minutes and you will see a difference. And if you do a whole body, like medical grade, tens of thousands of LED light beds, like the kinds that I use at Upgrade Labs, what you find is if you were to test your nitric oxide levels with one of the strips that just tests saliva, you can see in about a 20-minute session a shift in the amount of nitric oxide without having to take beets or anything else like that. So for some patients and for some of you who want to live a long time, beets are going to be good. But eating beets is going to be very high in oxalic acid, which over time is probably not good for your kidney function and your joints and your brain and things like that, depending again on your gut bacteria. So I've found that red light therapy directly on your equipment works really, really well. If you use it a little bit higher up, especially on women, on the chest region, or on men for that matter, it will also increase sensitivity as well. So there's something that says, maybe we should, have some red lights real close to us for a little while we're getting ready. There are anti-aging effects around collagen. There's all kinds of good stuff around red light that I believe is finally in our knowledge after 20 years after the first research came out. So I would say if you already use red light as a part of your longevity practice the way I do, you might want to also include it as part of your sexual wellness practice. And you'll find that makes a noticeable difference in how you feel and how you perform as well. And from that point, there are some other things that are likely going to be coming down. There are a variety of technologies that work in women, and some of those will probably work on men. There's new advances in the type of waveforms we're using for shockwave. There are radio frequency things, and there's also laser treatments that you can use that change basically the blood vessels themselves or collagen thickness. We're also likely going to be seeing some things around microdose electricity, basically low doses of currents that can cause stimulation either directly of sexual organs or more likely the pelvic floor itself. So if you need to get a strong pelvic floor, which is required for both men and women for optimal sexual wellness, you're going to want to get some strength there. So sometimes tightening the ligaments, whether it's through injection or through electrical stimulation that are along the inside upper parts of the thighs, that's very, very much worth doing. And I feel like that's a part of sexual wellness that might not be talked about enough, is how do you strengthen the pelvic floor? And certainly there's injectables and things like that. There's also exercises that are maybe not paid enough attention to, as well as electrical stimulation for muscles that frankly most men and women don't know how to turn on unless they're doing advanced yoga or Pilates or something like that. So we're talking about that. The other thing that deserves mentioning here is as we age, our collagen levels drop. And as your collagen drops, you can replace your collagen. And there are some mouse studies that show that collagen peptides do directly get absorbed. And we know a lot about di and tripeptides. It turns out that hydrolyzed collagen, like the stuff I make, does have, because it's hydrolyzed, because it's done without acid, it's done with enzymes, it has lots of these peptides that very likely, and in animal studies, can go in to the body. Now, collagen's important for your vaginal thickness, and so is stimulating it. So the combination of having enough collagen in the diet, ideally 20 grams a day or more, plus some sort of stimulation to increase the thickness of the vaginal walls is a good thing. And there's a bunch of technologies, most of which I think Dr. Killen's going to talk about, so I'm not going to go into those. But if you're eating collagen, it works. But here's what they don't tell you about collagen in the field of anti-aging. It took me a while to find the studies, but it takes about 7 years to replace half the collagen in your body. So the half-life of collagen is 7 years. It means if you start eating 20 grams of clean grass-fed collagen a day right now, 7 years from now, you're going to have healthier collagen formation in about half of your collagen tissues as they just naturally refresh themselves. That includes what's going on inside the vagina or even in the penis as you're looking to add more collagen in order to maintain its health. So that's with normal stimulation. But if you're actually using things like lasers or any of the other technologies that you're going to hear about from our other panelists, and you have bioavailable collagen in the body, I think you're going to find that your turnover rate is much, much less than 7 years. I don't have a study that'll tell you that. It just makes sense on its face. And I think you should consider that. And there are a variety of other things that you might have heard about in my other talk that stimulate mitochondrial function. And the body has a very unique algorithm in the way it allocates energy. And this is, in my opinion, from my research on mitochondria and all, it's an algorithm that explains all behavior that I can see in animals, plants, and humans. And it goes like this. The first place you put energy is into run away from, killing, or hiding when there's something that's an immediate threat. It doesn't matter if you think it's a threat. It matters whether at a cellular level or at a systems level, your body perceives a threat long before you could notice it yourself. And our threat detection algorithms are crappy. That's why we have so much stress and anxiety. So your energy goes there first. After that, your energy goes into eating everything. And that's because famine has killed everything. So we have fear and we have food. And only after those two are met are we going to allocate our precious energy towards the other F word, which is what the whole topic of this is, fertility. And what's happening there is that if you are deficient in energy production because you have mitochondrial heteroplasmy, basically early onset mitochondrial dysfunction, the studies show 48% of people under age 40 have it. Everyone over age 40 has it. We call it aging unless you've hacked it. And if you're low on your mitochondrial energy production, your body will not prioritize either repair of the sexual organs or function of the sexual organs because it's really too busy looking for the next bagel or the next threat. So keeping your mitochondrial energy high is going to be really important for sexual function over time. And one of the easiest ways to do that is actually the same thing that is shown in studies to help with Alzheimer's. And it's low-grade ketosis over time. So if you have some ketones present, your mitochondria work better. You go in and out of ketosis, intermittent fasting, don't eat large amounts of sugar. Things like that are even more important when you're now looking at it through a sexual wellness lens. Now, on that note, I feel like I've shared the most important things that I can share with you without going way more into hormones, and we've got a hormone expert on the panel, or without going way more into restorative techniques, pretty much all of which I've experienced at this point at the hands of Dr. Amy or some other practitioners practicing related things. So there is merit to putting stem cells in penises and vaginas. There's merit to PRP, and I'd ask you to listen to both of them very carefully, because you are going to want to know what I'm talking about. You're going to want to know about the interventional stuff and the hormone stuff. And when you get all of that right, together with the blood flow things you learned about nitric oxide that we covered, I think you're going to find that whether you're a man or a woman, no matter what your age is, that you can perform the way you want as often as you want. And you're also going to find that if you're a man, that you perform as often as you want. But if you ejaculate all the time, you are not going to like what happens to your hormone levels as a result of that. So you're going to want to start paying attention to that. And the length of the delay increases as you age. So basically what that means, to put it real bluntly, is you're going to have to get pretty good at what you do in the bedroom, because that's the other part of anti-aging, is having fun.
Thank you, Dave. That was great. I actually put a bio light or a red light down on the floor between my legs, and I'm designing a t-shirt. Tell me what you think. Scream Cream made me a scream queen. Nah, I'm going to get in trouble. They shouldn't have asked me to host this panel. Anyway, that was super productive and cutting to the chase stuff. Thank you. Our next presenter is Dr. Amy Killen. She is the Dossier Medical Director. She's a leading anti-aging and regenerative physician specializing in skin and sex, an international speaker, clinical practice owner, medical director of a national regenerative medicine physician training course, author and frequent media guest. Dr. Killen joined her colleague, Dr. Harry Adelson, in pioneering the full body stem cell makeover, one of the most innovative regenerative procedures currently available. And in her portion of the procedure, Dr. Killen combined stem cells and exosome injections with light, sound, and other energy-based therapies to give patients unparalleled synergistic regenerative effects for skin, hair, and sexual systems, encouraging confident aging for all. Let's welcome Dr. Amy Killen.
Hi, Dr. Amy Killen here, talking about sexponential medicine. As a way of introduction, I have a story for you. So a few months ago, I saw a healthy 50-year-old woman who came into my practice because she was having problems with arousal and orgasm. And she was doing all the things that she could think about to stay vibrant and youthful, but her sexual organs were not cooperating with her super longevity plan. So we discussed her hormones and all the other things that contribute to sexual health. And then I went on to perform a series of injections of stem cells and exosomes and PRP into her clitoris and anterior vaginal wall. I also did an infrared vaginal laser treatment in the office, and I sent her home with intravaginal red light therapy device, as well as a topical stem cell culture media vaginal product. 3 months later, I called her to follow up, and as usual, I asked if it was a good time to talk, to which she said, absolutely. So without further prompting, she began this rather long, very detailed monologue about how amazing her orgasms had been lately, and how she just couldn't believe we had turned the clock back like that. And she went on, orgasm this and arousal that, and of course it was great for me. But after a few minutes, she promptly paused and she said, Dr. Killen, I have to go, it's my turn. Well, it turns out she was at the airport in the TSA security line, where she'd been the entire time we've been on the phone together. So that, to me, is a pretty great endorsement of the profound benefits of something I call sexponential medicine. We're living in a truly extraordinary time. This is a time of exponential growth in medicine, where technologies from all sectors are converging with traditional medicine to create developments at speeds we've never seen before. And just as medicine and science are advancing at these exponential speeds, so too is sexual medicine. This is sexponential medicine, and we're right here where the pink arrow is, beginning that rapid and exhilarating ascent towards a degree of sexual longevity that we have never seen before. So a few years ago, I was in a yoga class and we were holding a particularly uncomfortable pose. And the instructor said to us, I want you to channel your sexual energy, pull your sexual power up into your belly, your chest, your head. Now take that power and shoot it out of your third eye chakra. Use that power to find your balance. Now, at the time, I was pretty new to yoga and I didn't know what a chakra was or anything about extra eyes, but I remember enjoying the idea that my sexual energy was radiating out into the rest of my body and then influencing the world around me. Now, this may not be exactly how it works, but the truth is the benefits of sex aren't confined to the bedroom. The benefits really do radiate out, affecting all parts of our health and wellness. So let's briefly review some of those benefits. And usually active sex life is defined as about having sex about 1 to 2 times a week. So emotional benefits include less anxiety, less depression, better self-image, less insecurity, just general improvement in happiness. Sex has also been shown to increase activity in the hippocampus to boost memory. In fact, in older men and women, the ones who are sexually active tend to have less memory loss and better cognitive function compared to those who aren't. The physical benefits of regular sex are numerous and include improved hormone balance, improved sleep, less pain, a stronger immune system. In fact, in one study in college kids, they showed that having sex just 1 to 2 times a week resulted in significantly higher salivary IgA levels, and thus was protective against colds and viruses. Sex also decreases blood pressure and is associated, at least, with less cardiovascular disease and longer telomeres. And finally, we know that sex contributes to our social health by bringing us closer to our partner. In fact, when I talk to patients who are having problems with sexual dysfunction, they don't complain about lack of sleep or high blood pressure. They tell me they feel disconnected from their partner. And to me, this is actually a really big deal because we live in a time when loneliness and disconnection kill as many people as obesity and excessive alcohol use. We live in a time when 20% of marriages are sexless, and 17% of millennials admit to checking their smartphones during sex. Many of us are just starving for real human connection, and sex gives us that opportunity to deeply connect with a partner and the opportunity to exercise our humanness in a world and a time where that's becoming more and more of a rarity. So now you can see the why. Why care about sexual health? Well, sex feels good, yes, but it's also good for you. In fact, I would argue that sex is a powerful anti-aging tool in its own right. But what if you can't have sex? Or what if it's not very fun? For many people, sexual dysfunction is quite real. About 40% of men in their 40s have some degree of erectile dysfunction, and that number goes up 10% per decade. 40% of women also admit to having some degree of sexual dysfunction, and that could be problems with libido, arousal, orgasm, pain. But it's crazy to me that half of us are reporting difficulties in this area. And most shocking of all, 75% of men and at least that many women who have sexual dysfunction are currently untreated. To me, that is unacceptable. I watched a presentation recently, by Alexandra Drain, who heads up a group called the ELIZA Group. And she gave a talk called The Unmentionables, which was a fabulous talk. And in her talk, she showed this slide, which details the things in our lives that most bother us, most torture us, thus preventing us from taking care of our active health problems. These are the stressors that pull us away from taking care of active health problems, like going to the doctor or getting our blood pressure checked. Second only to money concerns, her group found that an unhealthy sex life contributes to people ignoring other necessary components of health more than any other chronic stressors. So sex is not just good for you. An unhealthy sex life and the stress it can cause can be damaging to health. How can we ensure that you're able to have sex if you want to? What can we do using the sexponential medicine to help you reach your sexual potential? So I have this 4-pronged approach to achieving sexual longevity. Mind the mind, boost the blood flow, optimize hormones, and support the structures. So we'll start with the first one. Mind the mind. Your brain is your biggest sex organ. It's where desire begins and where it ends. And this is what I see in my office is a big problem with stress and overcoming stress and getting in the right mood. But just as there are tried and true practices to reduce stress, such as meditation and journaling and breath work, there are also these pretty cool newfangled tools out there to help get you in the mood. For example, apps like Rosie and Furly combine education with mindfulness to help women with low libido get into the right headspace. Another fun kind of techie way to improve libido may be transcranial photobiomodulation, which applies near-infrared light to the scalp to penetrate into specific areas of the brain's cortex. This is a technique that's been shown to be beneficial in depression and also seems to help with sexual desire and arousal. All right, the next category is boosts the blood flow. And this is a big one because your sex organs are like any organs in your body. They really appreciate good blood flow. And inflammation in your blood vessels from poor lifestyle choices can lead to atherosclerosis, which can dampen blood flow to different parts of the body. This is a problem for men, especially since blood flow is necessary for erections. But women also need blood flow, of course, for things like vaginal lubrication and clitoral engorgement. So what can we do? I have here three main things: healthy lifestyle, maintain nitric oxide, and maybe something like hyperbaric oxygen. So as far as healthy lifestyle goes, this is probably the most important slide I have, but I will not belabor it because I feel like you guys know how to eat right, stay active, and reduce inflammation. This is where longevity starts, sexual or otherwise. But let's move on to nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is really important for blood flow. It's the main chemical messenger that tells your blood vessels to open up or vasodilate, letting the blood get to your sexual organs. Nitric oxide is produced by the cells that line your blood vessels. So as you get older and plaque builds up, you can't make as much nitric oxide. By the time you're 40, you're making about half as much nitric oxide as your 20-year-old friends. And this continues to worsen as you get older. Now, this next slide shows us how lifestyle affects your ability to make nitric oxide. But even with the healthiest of people, levels are going to go down as you get older. So now you've got blood vessels that are more narrow because of plaque, and they can't open up or vasodilate because you don't have nitric oxide. So it's a double-edged sword, and it's a big cause of sexual dysfunction. As an aside, medications like Viagra work by preventing the breakdown of nitric oxide so erections last longer, but you still have to have your own nitric oxide for those medications to work. So how can we increase nitric oxide? One way is to exercise, even better if you're out in the sun. Other things like red light therapy or PEMF can also increase nitric oxide. Human growth hormone actually increases nitric oxide. Foods high in nitrate can also increase nitric oxide. So things like beets, green leafy vegetables, pomegranate, even dark chocolate. But, and this is a big but, in order to make nitric oxide from food, you need the healthy bacteria in your mouth, as well as stomach acid. So you really want to avoid the regular use of antiseptic mouthwashes like Listerine and stomach acid blocking medications like proton pump inhibitors. Other supplements like L-arginine or L-citrulline can be effective in helping to increase nitric oxide, but these work better in younger people because you need healthy blood vessels to make that conversion. All right, something else that's kind of new in the sexual wellness realm is hyperbaric oxygen. This is another option for increasing blood flow and oxygenation to the sexual organs that may be an effective method for reversing certain types of sexual dysfunction. So, for example, in one study, they looked at men who were getting hyperbaric oxygen for some other reason, and then they happened to have erectile dysfunction. And at the end of the treatment cycle, these men were noted to have improvements, not just in their erections, but also in sexual desire and orgasmic function. Why? Well, it turns out that hyperbaric oxygen induces angiogenesis, or healthy blood vessel formation, which you can see in the slide. And since most ED is associated with reduced blood flow, erectile dysfunction may be reversed simply by restoring that blood flow. All right, back to my four-pronged attack. Number 3 is optimize hormones. Now, as we get older, our hormones change. Most often, our sex hormones like testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone are going to decrease as we get older. And this is a big problem because hormones play a role not just in keeping our brains interested in the idea of sex, but also in maintaining the structural integrity of our sexual organs. So when women lose these hormones, they often notice declines in libido, but they will also see changes in the vaginal tissue, where the vaginal tissue becomes more thin and friable and irritated, and sex becomes painful. In men, it's the loss of testosterone. And we can see low libido, but we can also see changes in the penis as well. There's evidence that men who have chronically low testosterone over time develop changes whereby the normally smooth, elastic cells in the penis get replaced by these sort of scar tissue cells or fat cells that make erections difficult to maintain. Now, this is not necessarily new information, but how we measure those hormones and how we replace them has changed a little bit. Recent advancements in functional genomics and artificial intelligence are allowing patients to combine blood and salivary and urine hormone testing with DNA analysis of their personal steroid pathways to give a more complete picture of how best to replace their hormones. All right, number 4 in my four-part attack on sexual longevity is to support the structures. I love this slide for some reason. So 3 main things I have here to support those sexual structures are regenerative biologics, in-office energy devices, and at-home devices. So the first one is regenerative biologics. This includes things like platelet-rich plasma, stem cells, and exosomes. And these offer us the ability not just to support those structures, but potentially to actually restore function when it's been lost. We can inject regenerative biologics directly into the genitalia to increase the activity of the cells that are already living in those tissues. This is called paracrine signaling, and it's the main way that these therapies are thought to bring about regenerative changes in tissues. The traditional male and female optimization procedures, such as the P-shot and the O-shot, used PRP by itself. But we can also use stem cells from the patient, like their bone marrow or their fat stem cells, or even from exosomes from umbilical cord stem cells. Exosomes are essentially the action arm or the action end of a stem cell, and they carry within them growth factors as well as messenger RNA and microRNA from their host cell. So you can see in the picture, the exosome is a little bitty tiny thing. Exosomes seem to offer many of the same benefits of actual stem cells without the need for doing extra procedures on the patient to harvest their stem cells and without the need to receive somebody else's DNA. So how do these therapies actually help restore sexual function? In men with ED, injections of stem cells into the corpora cavernosa can help repair the damaged smooth muscle cells, increase blood vessel formation and blood flow, and even assist in nerve regeneration in some cases. In a number of studies, stem cell injections have been able to reverse erectile dysfunction caused by things like aging, as well as diabetes, high blood pressure, prostate cancer, prostate surgery. We're seeing similar benefits in using these therapies in women, restoring the healthy vaginal mucosa after menopause, or restoring urinary leaking in patients who have stress urinary incontinence. These are procedures that I do regularly as part of the full body stem cell makeover, which you'll hear more about from my colleague, Dr. Harry Adelson, sometime during this weekend. All right, the next thing I have in the support the structures category is in-office energy devices. So there's a couple of different things I love in this category. Shockwave therapy is one of them. This is also known as Gainswave in the United States, called low-intensity extracorporeal shockwave therapy everywhere else. This has really changed the way we treat erectile dysfunction. This treatment uses high-intensity sound waves delivered in this sort of a gun-shaped handheld device. And it was initially studied in men, but has now been adopted by vulva owners as well. Shockwave therapy has been shown to increase blood flow, boost local nitric oxide production, and potentially even break up microplaque. And it's quickly become one of the most asked for therapies in sexual medicine right now. I also love the vaginal lasers and energy devices here on the yellow side of the slide. This is a broad category and includes things like CO2 lasers and radiofrequency devices performed in a clinical setting. The general idea behind all of these are to combine heat and light to stimulate the repair of that vaginal tissue, to stimulate collagen and elastin, and to increase blood vessel formation in and around the vagina. And these are simple, painless 20-minute procedures that can help with lubrication, restore tone and tightness, enhance sexual pleasure, and improve the symptoms of stress urinary incontinence. All right. It wouldn't be a sex talk if I didn't give you some tools for home, or homework, as I call it. For the penis owners out there, my favorite at-home device is the penis pump. Now, I give one to every patient who comes in for procedures, and I also recommend frequent use of these pumps in any man who is no longer having regular nocturnal erections. The penis exists in a relatively low oxygen state most of the time, so nocturnal erections and the blood and oxygen that those bring are key to keeping the cells within the penis healthy. I recommend pumping 10 to 20 minutes a day for any man who is not having regular nocturnal erections. All right, for the vagina owners out there are multiple cool sort of femtech technologies to help strengthen the pelvic floor. A strong pelvic floor is necessary for everything, from holding in your urine to creating consistent, strong orgasms. So some of the tools out there are TINS devices, which are these transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation devices that use mild electrical stimulation to contract the pelvic floor muscles from the inside. Think Kegels on steroids. There are also externally worn versions of this that have just come out, like this Ellatone on the right, which you can just wear while you're walking around the house, which is pretty cool. We also have gamified Kegels devices that have associated apps with them that essentially have you playing video games with your vagina. And here's a couple of examples of those. For those of you who are more interested in relaxing than challenging your friends to online Kegels contests, there are also intravaginal red light therapy devices that promote better blood flow, lubrication, and sensation, and feel a little bit like a hot stone massage for your vagina. These are very relaxing. Now, how will you know if any of these home devices have actually improved your orgasm? Well, we now have smart vibrators that measure orgasmic strength and timing and allow you to track how things like stress or diet or other specific health practices are affecting your orgasm. Amazing. All right. So this slide kind of brings it all together and makes it easy to see how achievable sexual longevity really is for those who are educated and motivated and willing to dive headfirst into this world of sexponential medicine. It's a world where old-fashioned healthy lifestyle and mindfulness meets innovations in artificial intelligence, where functional genomics meets hormone optimization, where light and heat and sound and oxygen-based therapies meet injectable biologics and biometric tracking. Sexual medicine has been swept up in a tide of converging sciences and technologies. And if we allow ourselves to embrace this movement, we won't just change how our sexual systems withstand the test of time. We'll also begin to reimagine what it means to age on our own terms. And if that means that you end up screaming about your amazing orgasms while waiting in the TSA security line, all the better. Thank you guys so much. Here is my contact information. I am always happy to hear from people, and I wish all of you an incredible RadFest.
Wow. Thank you, Amy. That was really good. I got to tell you, though, I'm feeling like really behind the times. Shockwave energy, vaginal lasers, PRP, penis pumps. I've been relying on Jello shots for all this stuff, but I got to step up my game. Our next presenter is the esteemed Dr. Thierry Hertoghe. He practices medicine in his clinic in Brussels, and with his sister, Dr. Therese Hertoghe, they proudly represent the fourth successive generation of physicians working with hormonal treatments, and this since 1892, after Eugene Hertoghe, former vice president of the Royal Academy of Medicine in Belgium, and Luc and Jacques Hertoghe, endocrinologist. Dr. Hertoghe devotes his life to the promotion of a better patient-oriented and evidence-based medicine. He's the author of numerous books, and he also travels a lot to take part in numerous conferences and congresses around the world. He co-organizes many of these specialized gatherings and holds important positions in several international and national medical organizations, which usually are all about fighting aging. So without further ado, Dr. Thierry Hertoghe.
Hi, I'm Dr. Hertoghe. I'm the president of the International Hormone Society, and I will talk to you today about physical aging and what you can do to reverse physical aging, including sexual aging, especially with hormone therapies. This is the normal way of aging, and all the aging that we know now is, in my belief and my experience, actually a big part of that is unnecessary. And for example, in the future, you have a person like age 30 who's untreated, and that's a person who's really like a new, well-kept home. But you have other people who are age 65, I'm 63, and who are not treated with hormone therapies. And you can compare them to a neglected house, not well kept for not repaired when there are things that happen. And people who are age 75 or older, actually, and are not treated with hormone therapies, actually, they are becoming ruins. And this is actually a big part due to negligence. You see, for example, in the future, what I believe will happen, and we see this already in the office here and in many other centers where they treat aging, is people of age 70, if they start to take hormone and also peptide therapies. Peptides are little molecules that our muscle make, our liver makes, our brain makes for local use. And when you use those also, you probably will have that this person who starts becoming a sort of a ruin of himself, you will actually at 3 years later be probably looking younger. And at age 75, the hope is that he looks even younger, and that each time the patient goes to the doctor's office, actually, with a certain delay of time, of course, will look younger. Here's age 78, where he might in the future look, and then in the future we'll probably be able to have people that are age 80 but started treatment at age 70 have gone back to age 30, 35, 40 years. This is maybe very positive or very hopeful, but basically this is what's starting to happen. If we already are able now to reverse aging by 10 to 20 years, why not 40, 50 years in time? So a well-kept home should be the aim. So much of aging is unnecessary. And the reason for that is that because it can be safely avoided or reversed once you are older by hormone therapies. And my belief is that premature aging, most people who premature age, not all, but most, actually is really the result of negligence. It usually appears in people who do not correct their age-related hormone deficiencies. And this is really, I think we have a duty in our life to take good care of ourselves. And this is one of the ways to take good care. It's not the only way. You have to have good food, good nutrients, you need to breathe a good air, and to have a positive mind. But this is a fundamental and important part. Maybe 60 to 70% of aging is due to hormone deficiencies. And that can be corrected. I wrote a book on that. It's a real textbook, very big book with a lot of information how to reverse the aging of the hair, the face, and many details. Also the senses, how you can improve eyesight, not only with hormones, also with nutritional therapies. And it's not aesthetical medicine. It's actually hormone or nutritional aesthetical medicine. It's much better. You treat the cause, and we treat also the taste, the sense aging of the loss of smell and sense, also hearing loss, and many other things, the touch loss and things like that. So it's really very, very interesting book with a lot of information. I believe that in 20 years from now, we'll probably be able to reverse almost completely aging. And this book is probably the first step to it. Here we'll overview what hormone deficiencies can do that cause and accelerate aging, and what hormone therapies can do to reverse aging. And the first word about hormones. Hormones, what distinguishes them from pharmaceutical drugs? Well, hormones are first bioidentical. They have the same structure as the molecule in our body, and they are made and produced in the body since millions of years in the Homo sapiens species, in our species. And pharmaceutical drugs, so you see here hormones that are made in several tissues in the body called endocrine glands. And they make what molecules that are actually constant supplements of molecules that give us health and improve our physical appearance. And you need to continue having the same level you had at age 25. If not, you're in deficiency, you age. And pharmaceutical drugs, on the other hand, are not bioidentical. They have a different structure, and they're a foreign structure to the human body, and they are not produced by our body. They are have been invented and produced by machines since 10 to 70 years. Also, the hormone supplements we buy at the farms are produced by machines and tools, but basically these cannot exist if you don't use machines to produce them. And Compared to pharmaceutical drugs for aging, these hormones are often more efficient because the human body is made for them. It's adjusted to the body, and they do exactly what the body needs. If you give the exact quantity the person needs, of course, if you give an excess, that's not good, or too little is also not good. They're often safer at physiological doses, not at excessive doses, but a physiological dose, as the dose that we produce every day, that a young healthy adult produce every day. They're very safe. You don't risk side effects if you just correct the deficiency. Generally, it's very good. There are some balances to respect, basically very good. Often more evidence-based. There's 3 to 10 times more scientific studies about these hormones. And you can see this data. We have an International Hormone Society website where you have a lot of references on hormones. It's really impressive. And it often treats the cause. When you treat a hormone deficiency behind a sort of chronic disease, often the chronic disease attenuates or even disappears because you're treating the cause, and you're not just treating the pain or the headache that it provokes, but you're really treating and you're improving the body. So we treat the root cause of the problems with it. Thyroid. Let's look at thyroid. Thyroid hormones are produced here in the thyroid that are situated in the neck there. And they produce 2 main hormones called T3 and T4. But T3 is the most active one. So in preparation, you always need T3. This looks a thyroid sufficient person, this athlete. And look, a thyroid deficient person actually looks puffy, swollen. Accumulates a sort of edema called mixed edema. It's a sort of waste products accumulating between the cells. And the treatment is to give an oral tablet. And the best treatments are desiccated thyroid, that's thyroid often from pork or other animals, or synthetic T3 and T4. But you need to have the 2 hormones. That works better, especially if you want to treat aging. And insufficient thyroid therapy, like this person, for example, was when she was treated with insufficient therapy, thyroxine alone, and she took then T3 and T4, and look the difference. Charming person, really beautiful. And that's just changing to a better treatment. So you always need to take the best treatment. What about oxytocin? You probably heard about oxytocin. This is the reason why I'm communicating with you, why you are communicating with other people, why you're surrounded by people. It makes us sociable, this oxytocin. It's produced in the brain in an area called the hypothalamus that then delivers it through axons to nerve endings into the pituitary gland, the posterior pituitary gland, and they're secreted. And I wrote a whole book on it because it changed my life. I feel much better. I'm happier. I'm much more romantic. I'm much more in love with my wife with this. And I like people much more. And I'm much less this sort of cold person I was before. So it makes a purple and warm heart. But when you don't have enough, it's like this girl, for example. You don't smile. You're not happy. You feel disturbed by other people. So it really gives a problem. And you see many older people get more asocial because they get oxytocin deficient. That's also part of the aging. And so oxytocin therapy, you take sublingual tablets. That's the best form. But you also have intranasal oxytocin spray that also can help. And the difference when you see is that the person becomes smiling with it, becomes happier to see other people, becomes more sociable, and also has more rose cheeks. And what does it do on a woman's sexuality? Well, basically, it increases her attraction, attachment to the partner. It increases her sexual sensitivity, especially of the skin and the clitoris. They get much more stimulatable. And it also increases orgasm intensity and also the orgasm frequency. A woman, if she takes oxytocin, can get several orgasms. Actually, some women can get several orgasms naturally, very easily. Well, those women have high levels of oxytocin. And in men, it gives a whole change. In men, it increases them romanticism. They become a sort of charming prince for their wife. And it really changes. I saw that in my couple, how it changed things, and I'm really happy. It's the hormone. I never would have liked to die before having tried it. And I try it now every day. And it also increases love and loyalty to part. You don't want to go to see elsewhere. You're too attached to your part because it's so pleasant. It's like, a Disney film with the prince and princess each other with stars all around. It really makes a difference. If you're deficient, really try. You will understand that it does that. It also increases sexual skin sensitivity. When you have a touch, it feels more comfortable. It also is the hormone for men for ejaculation. The intensity of the ejaculation is much stronger, and also there's more ejaculation of volume of the first ejaculate. So it's really something that reverses that part of sexual aging. And what about MSH? MSH is the melanocyte stimulating hormone. This hormone is also produced in the brain in the pituitary gland. MSH is melanocyte stimulating hormone. That means that it stimulates melanin production. And that's the pigment that we have on our skin. And so deficiency signs, you're very whitish. You're whitish hair. Your hair can be also easier gray and very clear. And if you don't have enough, you easily sunburn because you cannot make the pigment melanin. And the treatment is subcutaneous injections of melanotan 2, which is synthetic derivative. There's also bremelanotide that gives less browning of the skin, but more sexual effects. And you have 1 time per day. Subcutaneous injections are given in very small quantity, not the quantities that you can look on internet. They're not adequate. And occasionally, you can also take it, if you don't want to take it every day, you can take it once a week before you go on a sunny holiday. So you're sure you won't sunburn and you get easier brown. And in 3 days during your romantic weekend, 1 injection of a certain amount is enough for 72 hours of better sexuality, for example. So this is how a woman looks before melanotan, and this is with melanotan. It makes her browner in 2 to 4 weeks of time. It goes even quicker than going into the sun, but you need to have sunlight anyway to have this effect. And then this is a man, for example, before and after. You see the difference with an MSH derivative. But what they don't say on those pictures is that MSH improves men's sexuality. It gives him sexual arousal. It gives him a higher erection frequency and spontaneous nocturnal erections. But testosterone can do that also. But MSH or melanotan can give much more hardness and volume of erections, what testosterone, the male hormone, cannot do. And it can also, you see here in these little pictures, give you an idea how that the erection is extremely strong with it and very persistent, so the duration is longer. This is really the most sexual enhancing hormone that exists. Unfortunately, it's difficult to find in pharmacies for the moment, but it's really a good product. And on women's sexuality, basically, it is probably the hormone that has the greatest effect on women's sexuality. Also, it can drive a woman extremely sexually aroused. There are some testimonies on internet that can give you an idea. They increase the sexual sensitivity of genital areas. They also increase the orgasm intensity and frequency. This is really a very strong hormone. The oxytocin gives a super sexuality, but this is a level more. I would say oxytocin is more the romantic, the sexual hormone, while MSH is more the strong physical sex hormone. So there's a little difference. If you want to be very gentle, oxytocin is more gentle. MSH is much more insistent. And what about testosterone for men? Testosterone for men, made mostly in men in the testicles, and also with another hormone called dihydrotestosterone that gives the bird growth and also easier erections than testosterone. Well, testosterone provides that masculine body that attracts so much women. And this is typical testosterone deficient men. Doesn't look so male, so muscular. And the therapy for testosterone is then to give to such a man a testosterone gel. each morning, or a transdermal gel, or intramuscular injections like every 2 weeks, or give implants that are valid for every 3 or 4 months, depending on what they want. You must understand that if you take a transdermal, you can adjust doses. Do more sports, you can take a little more, which is not so easy with intramuscular injections. It's not possible with implants. Testosterone deficient man here, that's how he looks with more testosterone, looks more male, more man. And if he takes a little bit higher amount, even more muscular. So it's really, the muscle mass is really linked to higher and higher amounts of testosterone, although there are other hormones that also improve the muscular mass. And what it does on men's sexuality is that testosterone increased sexual arousal libido. It's probably the hormone that does it the best, that really have more desire in men and women to have sex. On erection, it increased the frequency, really the hormone for frequency with MSH, of course, that does almost everything you can imagine on sexuality. And it also improves spontaneous and nocturnal erections. So if you have a problem there, you need testosterone as a man. You need maybe MSH, but first try testosterone, that's the basic, and MSH, if it doesn't work, you add. And then what about sex hormones in women? Women, they produce estrogens and progesterone in the ovaries mainly. These are the ovaries where you see these ground zones. And the estrogen deficient woman has not much breast, it doesn't have much volume, pelvis is slimmer, too slim, and she looks in generally quite slim. And many women have female hormone deficiency already very young once they have had pregnancy. This is how one looks before pregnancy. Looks beautiful, a lot of hair on the scalp, good smile, feels happy. And that's how a woman looks when she has been a mother. She has had a pregnancy. She has a slight estrogen and progesterone deficiency. The eyes don't shine so good. There's less volume in the hair, and her face looks a little paler, and she's a little less happy. And actually, the only difference is a little dose of female hormones. And women who had prior pregnancy, there's a study for it, they have significantly lower estrogen metabolites, estrogen being the main female hormone. Metabolites are when a hormone is used as a hormone, it becomes a metabolite. So if there are less metabolites, there's less action of the hormone, so less estrogen action. So women who have been pregnant have less estrogen metabolites than women who never were pregnant. So it makes a difference. And then we have what therapies for women, and the best form for women is to give transdermal estradiol gel upon awakening. And at the same time, you add oral or vaginal progesterone capsules. So it's progesterone here, it's missing here, but at bedtime. That's a good treatment. And then you see the change when you give a woman becomes like this, can become like this if you give too much, but basically I prefer giving you the excess so you really understand what's going on, how the change of body can make more breast, more volume in the pelvis, more volume all over. The face also has more volume. So what estrogens do on the woman's sexuality is that basically they improve the libido, they improve the sexual behavior. And so it's really also an important hormone for sexuality. What about DHEA? DHEA is a hormone made by the adrenal glands, and adrenal glands above the kidneys. And this is how a person looks like when his adrenal glands don't work well. He has done many deficiencies because there are a lot of different adrenal hormones, but the main differences that you see here are cortisol DHEA deficient. So he seems to lack volume. And the treatment for DHEA, the best treatment is oral capsules and tabs. Don't do it transdermal. An oral works better actually because it's then goes through the liver, and the liver makes a DHEA sulfate out of it, and that DHEA sulfate stays a very long time in blood. So it's the best form is take oral capsules or tablets in the morning. And DHA is very important because we have heard a lot of bad effects of cortisol. Well, cortisol is probably our most important hormone. Without cortisol, we die in 24 hours. So basically, you need to have a hormone, but because cortisol can break down tissues if it's too high, you give DHA, and DHA blocks that tissue consumption of cortisol. So you don't get a thinner skin with the cortisol, but you need cortisol. You need DHA to counter the cortisol. And you see that here you have adequate cortisol and DHA therapy. You see the change that appears then after. Of course, this is relatively higher levels because he took a little more, but you see the change when you have good adrenal hormones. And so what does DHA do on men's sexuality? Well, basically, it also gives slightly increase in libido, and it also can increase the frequency of erection and give more sexual effects, but it's not as strong as testosterone. And it's weaker to do that, although there are some good studies that show really good effects. But basically, it's small studies, and my experience is much less potent for sexuality than, for men at least, than testosterone. Well, for women, it does give more effects on libido, increase their libido, and also the sexual arousal and sexual phantasm. They have more ideas, especially if you're deficient. DHA, a hormone, works mostly when you have a deficiency. Then it improves a sexual aspect or a body aspect that has to improve. Testosterone for women, it's... you see a testosterone poor woman with small muscles, testosterone sufficient one with good muscles, good tonic muscles, and a woman who has had too much testosterone, often by bodybuilding, by doping actually, gets then even more muscles. But it's really related on the level of testosterone. And so when women take oral contraceptives, the oral contraceptives, they block much more than just female hormones. They block also the male hormones. So you have a less production of testosterone. This has been shown in women athletes that the birth control pill gives lower levels. You see it here on saliva before and after competition. But what you see also that these women who were athletes after competition, they had higher testosterone levels. So the competition boost testosterone levels, so you're better at doing it. So you see that the levels are higher when you have your competition of testosterone. So what type of treatment for testosterone therapy for women? Well, the most easy is transdermal gel and intramuscular injections. So each morning you would take a testosterone gel on the inner side of the arm, or once a month intramuscular injections. And on women's sexuality, it is very strong to increase the sexual arousal and libido, and also increase all types of sexual behavior. Some women need high amounts of testosterone, and then they receive a blocker so they don't get any masculinization, and then they do very good. But sometimes it's not enough to give a small dose. That's probably the only treatment sometimes need to be kicked up without any risk, because women have high testosterone levels. They are not only brilliant and more dominant and know what they want, they're determined and things like that, but basically they generally live longer. A centenarian woman has usually 2.5 times the level at 100 years of a woman here on average at 70 years. So it's only a woman with high testosterone that live long. And then this is, for example, a testosterone-rich woman that sexually she carries her partner to bed. Growth hormone for adults, this is the anterior pituitary gland, and that part of the pituitary gland makes growth hormone. About half of that is for growth hormone production. And this is a growth hormone deficient person. He looks older, age 50. And the treatment is to give subcutaneous injections at bedtime, before bedtime, because it's mostly secreted in the first hours of the night, so you mimic the circadian rhythm. And you see here this growth hormone deficient man, it was one of my first patients, see the difference in 2 months of growth hormone and 4 months of testosterone. And see, but it's mostly a growth hormone effect that you see more volume in the hair. You see that lower eyelids are twice less sagging, and that the sagging cheeks are there no more. He has a firmer face. And so you see, this is before a woman with 18 years of growth hormone deficiency, obese, and look the change in 2 years of growth hormone treatment. Incredible. And the only treatment that changed here was growth hormone treatment. Of course, that relatively high amount, but you need that high amount. Obese people need high amounts. And IGF-1 is insulin-like growth factor 1. It's made in the liver. It works with growth hormone. Growth hormone actually increases the production of IGF-1, but at age 50, you're not able to increase enough. So you need to take it. And this is IGF-1 deficient, very small little muscles. And treatment is also subcutaneous injections. You also have a long-acting IGF-1 that is 10 times more potent, as a possibility. And this is IGF-1 deficiency. And we know now that if you have high IGF-1, you can become actually governor of California, because this guy, Arnold Schwarzenegger, became governor of California. But you see, he has some an excess of IGF-1. That's typically how it looks like when you have an excess. So what does it do? Growth hormone and IGF-1 do on men's sexuality? Well, on erection, they have an effect on erection. They increase the hardness and volume. They reverse the atrophy of the penis, actually. So basically, you get a harder and a more voluminous erection and more prolonged. So they really help for those things to improve the situation. So I think we've seen that all these hormones are important, not only for sexuality, but also for our body aspect, and that you cannot have an optimal treatment against aging if you don't correct those hormone deficiencies. Now let's look at the things. My aim in life is actually to provide to people an optimal health, and to provide to the patients to delay, or even if whenever it's possible, to reverse their aging. We cannot promise everything, but we can say that we do our best to do it safely and efficiently, and so that you really get a better health and a better physical appearance, also without aesthetical procedures, really by treating the cause of aging. And here's my team members. You see Guy on the left, and then it's me, and then it's Benoit, and you see Mark and Sabine. But we have also Vanessa, who has joined the team since then. And the tools we have we use bioidentical hormone supplementations, we use nutritional supplementations, and we also improve the diet and the lifestyle. And that really is efficient. Our logo is living healthier with hormone and nutritional therapies, because that's where we focus basically on. There are physicians with more than 15 years of experience. Benoit has more than 20 years of experience in the domain. And there's a possibility that I would look at your medical file. I see less patients. I do see patients. It's possible to come to me, but often the patients go to other doctors, and I can give for not too much, not expensive advice. And we have also online consultations now, because we cope with the COVID-19 crisis. And so to book a consultation, this is the email, secretary@hertoghe.eu. And then we have the Hertoghe Medical School, which has launched a new training program. And it's a 2-year training program in hormone and nutritional therapies. It's mostly hormone, but there are a lot of nutritional therapies. And it's through internet with live webinars and pre-recorded online video courses. It's strongly evidence-based. I can tell you we've done the whole literature and updated the courses. It's all on the International Hormone Society website, a lot of references. It's extremely practice-oriented. So this is really for physicians or for health professionals to go very far in their dedication to the patient. We do get also credits, CME credits or CPD credits. And they're really unique lectures. We have, for example, 8 sessions on immunology and inflammation, how hormone and nutrition can decrease. It's really interesting. And reversing physical aging, fatigue, burnout, and then hormone therapies like thyroid and female hormones. And so for more contact information, contact office@hertoghe.eu. So This is the training program. All the difference you see that there's a melatonin model, but really in depth and very more practical than you ever had shown. So people even with physicians with a lot of experience, they will learn a lot more. And there's also a certification program you can do. There's exams that can be done. And so here's for the second year, there will be a fantastic longevity module with 4 sessions on longevity. Everything you would dreamed of knowing, oxytocin supplementation, growth hormone supplementation. So really very interesting. I really insist that physicians should join this because it will really help them in their practice. And we're giving a free webinar on October the 6th, live on Zoom at 2:20. So it's a free webinar. It's 8 o'clock Belgian time at p.m. So but you can see it afterwards if you cannot see it directly. So I thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, send an email to office@hertoghe.eu. And I'm really happy of having had you and the occasion, and really thank the people, Jim Stoll and the whole team of RADFest for all their support and the opportunity they gave me to talk here. Thank you.
Great panel, and we're going to have Greta Blackburn back here to wrangle some Q&A with this great bunch of presenters. There she is. Hey, Greta, great panel. Take it away with the Q&A.
I'm sure you trust me with the Q&A. I'm trying to find a dealer for some Oxy, some MSH. I'm going to ask the panel in general, because everybody, what they want to know, and we're getting texts and emails and all this. So, number one, are oxytocin tablets available in the U.S.? Number two, where do you get MSH? So who wants to jump in and give us give us the intel here?
I'll start. You can definitely get oxytocin as sublinguals or as intranasal sprays. Those are probably the 2 most common things I've seen, usually by compounded pharmacies in the U.S., but pretty easy to get if you have a compounding pharmacy and a doctor who knows how to prescribe them.
I've taken oxytocin in sublingual troches that seem to work as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works certainly well. There's also an oxytocin that you can get at a pharmacy that is long-acting. And that's has another use than sexuality. It basically has a use for fibromyalgia. Now, for MSH, it's a difficult question because before 4 or 5 months ago, it was possible to get it in a pharmacy, and the FDA seemed to have stopped it. And so basically, the only websites that sell it, are websites that are at the border of legality. And so it's a little difficult to get MSH for the moment because of FDA regulations. It's really a pity because it's quite a safe substance.
Ah, so it's one of those cusps of quackery things the FDA thinks. But anyway, so we just hold off now.
I'm almost afraid to say where I get my MSH or my other stuff like that, because as soon as you put a thing up like that, then the next day the places get targeted. And we all know a very well-respected and clean compounding pharmacy that just got harassed about peptides. And so it's sort of like you kind of have to whisper and say it on an encrypted chat instead of putting it publicly. But I injected some MSH this morning, a little PT141. And like, that's normal and healthy and good. And if someone thinks it's not, then they don't have to do it. But, you know, it's getting to the point where there are a lot of people who are pretty upset that they can't order stuff for their patients that is healthy. And I think there will be a regulatory change as a result of that.
And just a side note on that, PT141, is now FDA approved for women as the drug Vyleesi. So it's essentially the same thing as PT141.
In that case, I'm identifying as a woman for the purpose of getting my prescription done.
Yeah, so you can get that actually through, just regular OBGYNs if you are a female, although of course it works both for men and women.
And were you saying about Vyleesi?
It's Vyleesi. Vyleesi is the drug name that it's registered under.
And it's 10 times more expensive than buying the peptide, right?
Probably.
We had a question for you, and Thierry, I'm going to get right back to you, but just quickly, since we're on PT141, injected versus nasal, and you guys can chime in on that as well.
Well, if I can answer, the injectable works generally better.
Yeah.
The PD-141 is actually bremelanotide, the one that gives less darkening of the skin, but it's less efficient, I find, for sexuality than melatonin 2, which darkens the skin more.
Okay. Dave, what are the specific wavelengths for red and infrared light, and what about an infrared sauna? That's a question from a viewer.
Got it. So around 860 to 880 is an ideal frequency. There's also some amber frequencies, and I don't remember that number off the top of my head. It's the one we put into the true light panels. What's missing from the world of light therapy is amber light affects small blood vessels, and you can actually cause healing and a reduction in those, and even a reduction in fine wrinkles. So I believe that your best bet is to have those red frequencies, and to have the infrared frequencies. Saunas are different in that the saunas are going to cause detoxing, sweating, lymphatic benefits, and even benefits of exercise. Like you'll see your blood sugar goes up in a sauna, which is interesting, as it would with a heavy workout, as your body is responding to the stress. So do the sauna. You won't see the same benefits on the skin as you do from the LEDs. And consider amber, and consider lights that turn on and off, because those seem to have a different effect than lights that are constantly on.
Okay, and I'm going to keep going quickly here because we got a ton of questions. So if I seem like I'm cutting you off, I'm not. Dr. Killen, what is the red light device that you set the patient home with?
I use the VFit Plus, which is it's a 662 nanometer intravaginal red light therapy device. You can actually get the regular VFit just from Amazon or whoever. The VFit Plus is a physician model. It's a little bit stronger. You can get it through doctors' offices, but that's my go-to for just sort of gentle, relaxing intravaginal rejuvenation at home.
And that gets you talking in TSA lines. Dr. Hertoghe, a specific question from one of our viewers. I'm a man, I'm 68, I'm still having sex 3 to 4 times a week. Is more sex good or bad for me?
Well, it depends if you're hormonally treated. Like any physical activity over the age of 40 years, if you don't take hormone therapy like sex hormones or thyroid and things like that, you consume those hormones. So if you do too much, you will age quicker if you consume excessively. So I would propose to that person to take hormone therapy, and then it's okay, no problem.
Okay, good. This is for anybody who wants to jump in. Are elevated levels of prolactin in men concerning? Any recommendations?
Yes, they are, because they can block sexuality, and they can also, if they're in very big amounts, create a tumor in the pituitary gland that crushes down the secretion of other hormones of the pituitary gland. So you need to control. Now, what gives high prolactins? Chronic stress can give that, acute stress also. And basically also, if you touch the nipple very often, you can make more prolactin. So you need to be careful for that.
Okay. Dr. Killen, what happens to nitric oxide when you practice hyperventilation / holding? Think Wim Hof breathing.
I don't know a lot about, I know Wim Hof breathing, but I don't know exactly what happens with nitric oxide during that specifically. Do you know, Dave?
If you breathe more slowly, your nitric oxide levels will go up. If you're hyperventilating, as I understand, it goes down, but then from the breath hold component, it would likely go up. The biggest thing that you can do to improve nitric oxide is related to breathing, but it's not Wim Hof. Even though Wim's about to go on my show, I love Wim. He's a friend, and I practice some of his techniques. It's to tape your mouth when you sleep at night. And when you do that, it sounds crazy, but it changes the lining of your sinuses, which are made out of the same kind of erectile tissue that you'd find in the labia or in the penis. And it's shown that breathing slower and breathing nasally versus through the mouth increases nitric oxide levels. And you should see a difference in your morning kickstand if you do that for a few nights in a row, at least if you're a guy.
Thierry, growth hormone somaderm gel. What do you think about it? Is it safe?
Growth hormone transdermal gel, is that what you're talking about?
Yes, somaderm.
No, well, that should not work. The growth hormone is a lot of amino acids, 191 amino acids. It's a too big molecule to go through the skin, so it should not work. You have to inject it. It's subcutaneous injection is the treatment.
Okay. Any and all, or any one treatments for painful sex?
There's a lot of causes for painful sex. Obviously, whether you're a male or female matters. What kind of structures are down there? I would say first off is go see your doctor, get a good exam, see what the cause is, because we can't talk treatments if we don't know what's causing it.
So, some people just like it.
Yeah. Well, it's often the most major cause in women when they have pain at sex is that they're not sick. They don't have enough female hormones. So the mucosa of the vagina is just too dry and it hurts. And the simple treatment is to give locally or systemically, that means for the whole body, enough female hormones, and that corrects the problem.
I love that answer. I also believe that, depending on if it's men or women, you're looking at painful curvature or, urethral issues, like see a doctor who's actually going to look at what's going on there. It's really worth it. And if it is related to a history of abuse, and there's a common correlation between painful sex and history of abuse, that can be emotional abuse, sexual abuse, whatever else, there's a treatment called EMDR, eye movement dissociative response. A therapist can do it with you. It only takes 1 or 2 times. And I've seen people have profound changes in that. And this is the psychological component of painful sex that is real, as well as the physical stuff. And watch out for PCOS and endometriosis and fungal and yeasty kind of stuff like that. I've seen people who have a hard time, especially women, go on antifungals for a little while, and magically a lot of stuff cleans up. So that's worth considering with the doctor's help.
Okay, this is a great question. If a man has had prostate cancer, what of everything we've talked about, is there something that's absolutely verboten? Are there things that are particularly okay or not okay?
Well, there's certainly nothing forbidden. I give to men with prostate cancer testosterone, growth hormone, and there are studies that back it up so that it's very safe. Growth hormone decreases about 50% the number of cancers overall. And testosterone, for example, the only problem is that testosterone can convert into estrogens, and that can accelerate a cancer. But otherwise, many studies have come out now. I think it's 28 different studies, and none has shown an increase of prostate cancer or recurrence in men receiving testosterone. One even showed 4 times decrease in recurrence when they take testosterone. But you still need to watch out that it does not convert to too much female hormones, estrogens. That could be a risk.
And if you have active prostate cancer, then you would not want to take testosterone in general. You'll want to be off of that, because that can increase the growth of the tumor.
Studies show that it's no problem. They give to men who have active prostate cancer testosterone, and we have several professors.
They'll live longer.
Who do it. Several professors say you have to give it. There's no reason, there's no connection, but I do think there's a connection if the man makes too much female hormones. So a man who has big breasts and a big belly and an abdominal busy, a pot belly, those men make a lot from the testosterone. In the fat tissue, they make a lot of female hormones. They may be at risk, so you need to give a blocker of the excessive conversion of testosterone to estrogen to these men, and then it's safe. And so many studies have been done in active cancer too. But of course, it's not a metastatic cancer. But even metastatic cancer, years ago, 2 studies showed that when you give testosterone, they live 2 times longer than what was expected.
And of course, the common wisdom out in the world of normal people is that you don't go near any of this stuff if you have the cancers.
I did an extensive review of that literature for one of the chapters in my anti-aging book that came out earlier this year called Superhuman. And Dr. Hertoghe is probably done more research than I have on this, but everything I read supports what he's saying. I think that we have been misled because of some problems a long time ago. And would also like to point out that what you put on your hair, if you're using finasteride, can complex this whole situation quite a bit because of what it does to your hormones. And I think that's missing from a lot of the things that are working down here. And I'm a guy, and it's what you're putting on your hair.
So quick, got a couple minutes. I want to be sure that, because one of the things that people are going to want to know is, okay, well, everybody can't get to Dr. Hertoghe. Everybody can't get to Dr. Killen, but maybe they can. Can you each maybe, and maybe it's not appropriate for you, Dave, I don't know, but is there, Thierry, would they contact you at office at Hertoghe.eu. Is that a way? Let's say they're heading to Brussels next week, or you're.
Just look on internet, official consultation of Dr. Hertoghe, and I have doctors working with me that can see the patient. You can also ask an advice for me. Of course, I'm working so much that I have just a limited amount of number of patients, but basically we have a whole team. We have 5 other doctors working here, and we can do Skype consultations now. The only problem is how to get the supplements, because United States is a very restrictive country compared to Europe. Europe is better, freer, so we can easier get, and the pharmacies cannot send to the United States. That's the only problem. So you need to have a local doctor who can make prescriptions.
And Dr. Killen, for you, how does somebody contact you?
So I'm taking new patients for stem cell therapy through Doceri Medical, which is Doceri, DOCERE medical.com. And we do phone consultations for that, and then people can just fly in. I'm kind of like Dr. Hertoghe. I don't have new patients that I'm taking for anything else, but I do have another clinic and other providers that work with me that can see new patients for everything else besides the stem cell therapy.
And just a quick note here, Greta. Amy has done extensive work on my junk as well as other parts of me. Thank you, Amy. And Dr. Hertoghe, your book, amazing. My wife's a Karolinska trained physician, and you are literally her favorite hormone writer. So just for people listening, we have awesome people on the panel except for me.
You're all awesome, and we've gotten some great, really productive. Normally these seminars on human sexuality are very airy-fairy and sort of philosophical, and this is real. I mean, when you're talking about going out and buying a penis pump and some screen cream, we're talking boots on the ground. So I want to thank you guys on behalf of all the Redfest viewers, and I look forward to next year's where you've gone to the next level. Who knows what'll be going on then? So thank you so much on behalf of everybody who's watching.
Thank you.
Great job, everybody. What a powerhouse panel. Thank you so much. Greta's a loose cannon, but she did great.